You gotta understand the enemy's not the man, it's the mindset. Killing my people that's in a similar to COVID. No sense. How you take a life without a motive? Tired of seeing protest, dying to see progress. For the person that'll win in the end, doesn't really matter what's the color of the skin. When the bullets scatter, when they bleed from within, haven't we shed more blood than these tears?
We're talking about solutions. Knowing that there is no silver bullet solution to any of this, I want to know what's one thing that you guys can do in your own life to work towards a solution, and one thing that you wish someone in power would do to work towards solutions.
Well, I believe as far as what we was talking about, the policing, between the policing and the people that live in the city. You know, we always have a negative, the police have a negative outlook on certain individuals live in certain areas, and in certain areas, people always have that negative thought about police. And like, for instance, when we had the protests, and I was up there, and you know, folks was talking about, because my wife works in law enforcement, and I said, well, these young people ain't gonna destroy my city, you know, and because I take pride in this city, whether, you know, some people want to downgrade it or whatever. But the kids were yelling at the police and all this. I said, no, y'all not gonna do this. See, we have to have somebody that is, like you said, in the middle. You know, you're not on the right, you're not on the left, but you're in the middle. And the one police officer said, oh, they're fine, they can. I said, no, they can't. I said, y'all haven't done anything to them. It's all right for them to protest, but they're not gonna come and just disrespect y'all like that. And so me trying to be a parent, trying to tell the kids, look, voice your opinion, but you don't voice it at the police here because they have not done anything. Now, when they do something here, then we can address their issue. Like where you see where the choking, you know, they're using all these different tactics. And the first thing I thought is, they never did this back in the day. Why is it happening now? And see, we need to figure out what the training is for law enforcement, so we can say, hey, that's not, you know, like the committee he's doing, that's not acceptable. Y'all gotta change that training. Take that out of your training. Put something else in there. Because that's what the George Floyd thing brought everything to the surface. We seen you with your knee on a man's neck for that long of time. Why didn't y'all just pick him up and put him in the cruiser? He would still be alive today, and the cities of America would not be on fire. So I just want him just, you know, like he's doing with the community thing.
I mean, we live in a country of laws. It starts with the laws. Like, if laws don't change, if policies don't change, nothing else changes. We do not remember Martin Luther King because of the walks that he did or the protests that he had. We remember him because of the that he gave the Warren Court the heart and the ability to change, to create the laws that they created, creating the Civil Rights Act, and you know, so I mean, and as someone who's trained in constitutional law, for me it always starts and ends with the law. It always starts and ends with policy. If you want change, you have to change the ability to enforce it. You know, so I mean, as a legislator and an aspiring legislator, I would tell others that that's where it starts. It starts with the laws that are on the books. You know.
I would say that one of the things here in the state of Ohio, we've had some pretty significant wins just in the past couple, 6-8 months, as far as CJR. I mean, the Indigent Defense Fund being fully funded.
For the first time since its creation.
Yes. Right now we're working on, I'll let you talk about SB3, so.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned someone in power. What we wish they would do. You know, the Senate just passed Senate Bill 3, which is a reclassification of drug possession crimes. You know, right now, automatic felonies, and it would reclassify low-level possession as misdemeanors. When someone is arrested on possession, you talked earlier about the issues with defense. If convicted and found guilty, or you plea in order to avoid trafficking charges, you just plead possession. Right now, it's still a felony.
Right.
And the crime, or the real punishment that you're going to pay, is not in the following year that you spend in prison. It's the rest of your life. Because in Ohio, we have 800 collateral sanctions, 800 different laws that are in the Ohio Revised Code that are going to restrict you on your housing and your employment for the rest of your life. Right. That just passed the Senate on a 25-4 margin. It's in the House now. So for my thing of someone in power, I hope that Governor DeWine will publicly say that he wants to sign that bill into law, and that the House, when they come back after the election this fall, the first thing they do is they pass as a first order of business and send it to the governor to sign. That's what I hope for someone in power. For myself, what I want to do, what I want to do in this time, you mentioned Martin Luther King, and years before the Civil Rights Act was Montgomery, right? And in Montgomery, Martin Luther King Jr., he was only 27 years old when the Montgomery bus boycott started. And that night that they bailed Rosa Parks out of prison, and they had already laid all that groundwork that whatever that moment arose, that they were going to grasp it and they were going to use that for change in Montgomery. That night, people flooded into churches in Montgomery. They had to speak in 5 different churches just to be able to get in front of everybody because it was that moment. And they got the agreement that we're going to lead a boycott, that we're not going to ride on a bus in Montgomery. We are going to walk. We are going to carpool. We're going to loan our cars for someone else to drive to get people to work. They got all this together. They were signing pledge cards that night. Not a single person in that room knew that that boycott was going to last 381 days. Not a single person knew that. They didn't know how long it was going to last. They didn't even know if they were going to win, but they were determined they were going to do their part. So what I want to do, we're in that moment right now, right? We're flooding the churches. We're going from one church next to here. Where's the plan? What do we got to do now? And right now, we don't have that central figure that we're all coalescing around. I don't know how long it's going to be, but my commitment right now is each day to keep on having conversations like these, to keep doing what I do in the legislature, working with our elected leaders, and working with people that are out in our communities, talking to them so they know that there is something that can be done. I don't know if that number's 381. I don't know if it's 642. I don't know what it is, but we're going to keep on doing it, and that's what I'm going to do.
And he touched on reentry, which is, as he mentioned, is extremely important in creating equal opportunity in the black community. We won't get into statistics because we all know the disparity between our prison populations, but 95% of those people are coming home at some point in time. What happens then? And he touched on it, and it is. I got into law because at 17 I was handed a what was considered a teen life sentence. So I spent nearly 4 years inside those walls, and it saved me. And it was at a time where I was always very studious, and it was at a time where it allowed me to refocus and get back into academics. And but the difference between me and say someone who was 19 when that happened is the fact that I have youthful offender status. So I came out as if nothing ever happened. So I was able to get Pell Grants, and I was able to do these things that a felon is not able to do, and continue on with my life. And reentry is extremely important in creating what we're trying to create here and creating solutions. We have to give those people opportunity to not just survive, but to flourish when they come home. And we have to set policies in place that allow them to do that.
Well, and you mentioned that as if nothing had ever happened, and whatever you had happen in your life that sent you to that point that you made that decision. What difference did some months make, right? Back in the 1950s here in Ohio, we only had 54 felonies in the Ohio Revised Code. 54. Today we're at 11 times that. And can we claim that our society is 11 times better because we have felonized all these things? We have to have that conversation about, do our punishments fit our crimes in the first place? I'm watching the head shake around this circle. We have to be able to spread the awareness, because most people don't even realize, because they just know that felonies, they think, make them feel safer. And so you're spot on.
That's like sometimes I just think, how do you really bring it home? Because I'm like, big picture, stuff, but I back in my neighborhood that I grew up in the house that I grew up in, with my dad being gone and trying to figure out, talking to neighbors in a new way, because, sometimes you don't want to know what you're going to have to deal with. But, I keep Woodland safe, or keep these neighborhoods safe. And I'm like, just a long time ago where I was just like, well, from who? From what? Can we do this? Because we can, because it's just like, I had a hard time, when I was 12, I remember I said this before, but I have this diary, and I was like, really thought I'd come up with this great thing. And I was like, Mansfield's the microcosm of all American social ills. And I was like, I didn't even know what it meant, but it sounded right. Sounded right, and sometimes, I'm like, I left here and I worked for the White House. I got a PhD at a super fancy place. I didn't think I belonged because I came from senior high and we didn't have AP, there's all kinds of personal stories that, but every once in a while when I walk around here and I definitely see some of the old dudes, what do they call it? Pale, stale, and male, but I like that. I thought that the other day. It's easier than saying old white guys. But just with the mentality of we don't need to change and there's nothing wrong. And what you're saying is crazy talk when you're like, the whole world is moving right now, and it should be. And unfortunately, I didn't want that, George Floyd had to die and the world to see it happen in that way. But it happens, and it's going to continue to happen. And unless, protest is very effective. It is absolutely an effective measure. And so far, the general community attitude in a lot of ways has been just the panic of that possibly happening. And I'm sure people are connected in other ways that I might not be privy to. And I know I'm cranky about it, because I'm like, we don't have time, to wait anymore. And, and I just hear the passion and I know all of you are doing hard work, and we all have to be doing it in different ways. But, it's just, and sometimes the hardest part about reform is it's only reforming a system that's broken, right? Or that it's built on these really foundational cracks. And I love that you use history too, because it's history is our path forward. And we have, I'm always like, it's a historical emergency. We've got to know it, because it's we're walking around so often, and everyone needs to know it. Because it's not just for white folks. It's, people think that people of color have some genetic code where they know this history. I'm like, no, we all don't. And all I guess I'm saying is that, I don't ever want to roll over the amazing work that people have done for a long time and kept at it. But now's our chance to blow things up and set it on fire. And I don't mean that literally, right? Just in case, but that's what, everybody's like, defund the police, or these panics. And we're like, no, we have to shift our systems and look at the ways that, that these things are just killing people's futures, and so, so there are sparks here. And that's the thing I guess I want to see out of this community, is creating more of a public space where we aren't afraid to talk about it, where traditional religion, and I'm not saying the religious churches, if you will, there's a lot of suppression. I don't mean oppression or repression, just it's not an open thing. It's just a shutdown thing. We don't communicate. It's not a good space. And just the partisan politics, if we can, get at the energy of what's coming, get at the energy of the people who, these young people who did stand up and do something in this space, and the energy of the things that are about a truly better future. And what does that better future mean? We keep talking about it, and it just, healthcare, education, and the right to, to not be thrown away in jail, for something that is basically about inequity and perception,
Well,
and keep it up.
one thing that he was saying about Martin Luther King, and this is one of the things I preached a message one time, and I was talking about how we as black people, we don't uproar about nothing in this day and age because we have it too good. We have come a long way, and what I mean by that is we live in the nice neighborhoods now, we drive nice cars, and the only time we get in the uproar, we don't get in the uproar when we have black on black crime, but we get in the uproar when the police officer kills one of us. And so now you don't hear those type of leaders anymore. No one, everybody is like, we're full. We have money in the bank. We have all these things. And so it's going to take it seemed like a non-church person like those young ladies did down there to revolutionize a change. It's sad to say. I mean, because like you said, Martin Luther King was 27 years old.
Lamont, the one thing I disagree with you, though, is that leadership doesn't happen in the spotlight.
Right.
It happens on the Sundays when you get up in that pulpit and you say things like that when no one's watching except for your congregation. People that know you, and you know better than I do how often they're listening to you when they're not, and you're still getting up there and you're still saying it.
Right.
That's when the real leadership happens.
Yeah.
And that's and I think that kind of leadership that we try to portray when we're not sitting in front of cameras, we're not sitting with microphones on us, and when we're not coming together like this, but when we're doing it with our families. And this is the one thing that I agree with you were talking about earlier, Beth, about that there were things that were wrong from the get-go with our nation, and it showed up in our laws, etc. The one thing I have to respectfully disagree on, though, is that the foundation is cracked. The reason I disagree with that is I believe that our founding fathers were human beings. They knew they were human beings. And that's why even whether we agree with their religion or not, and the different variations that you had, ranging from atheism to deism to Angelicans, you had everything in there, right? Quakers, right? And despite all of that, they still called upon providence, and you see that in their letters and in their writings, because they knew that something had to be beyond them. They had a dream and a vision that was beyond anything that existed in the world at the time. They had a vision for something, when principles to be enshrined in a declaration, and then later, 10 years later, in a constitution. They had a vision for something that was so much bigger and so beyond, that was so big and so bold, they couldn't live up to it themselves. And they knew it. And so that's why they punted on something that was so unforgivable, with slavery specifically. And we saw that crop up for the next 200 years after that, and we're still paying the price of what they didn't have the courage to deal with at the time. But the principles and the vision is still a good one. It's why we're here. It's why we're still fighting for this stuff, because we still share that vision of an equal and just society where we don't answer to a monarch. We are all equal on the basis that we are human beings and we stand the same before God, no matter who your God is, regardless. And we're still trying to live up to it. So I think the foundation was a good one. They got the first row. I used to work in masonry. The first row of bricks is all askew. You can fix a bad row of bricks, and you can fix a bunch after it. But it's that quiet leadership to keep on moving forward when no one else is watching, when we're not in the spotlight, to keep on having conversations like what you're talking about. For me, the conversation with my friends, what all of us are talking about tonight.
But here's the thing about America. When America was established, it was not established as black men being the white man's equal, or that we were the same. So that's why George Washington had slaves. All of them had slaves and owned slaves. Now some of them treated their slaves a little bit better than others. But when you had people taking little black babies from their mother and wrapping chains around their neck and putting them by the river to catch crocodiles. See, that's the injustice, and that's the blood that's been spilled in the earth, that our ancestors' blood, like I said one Sunday, is crying out in the earth. And that's why you see such an uproar even in this time with black people. Because, it's like, with the pandemic, it just brought a light to everything. I mean, we've been seeing black people being killed by police. I saw it when I was coming up. I'm born in the 70s. I saw it in the late 70s, early 80s. Police shutting down Mulberry Street, killed a young black man down there because he had a knife. That's nothing new to me. I knew right then and there that the police was going to be a person that will take me out if I do anything wrong. And me, I've been in trouble after 17. Convicted felon of domestic with my first wife. And when the police ran up on me, I was very respectful because I knew I didn't want to give them no problem. When they said, Mr. Lindsay, put your hands up, I put my hands up. And this is what I teach. I said, when you get pulled over by police, make sure you follow everything they say. If they tell you to do jumping jacks, you better do them. Because if not, you put up any type of resistance, you say anything about why you pulled me over, why you doing this, that gives them a probable cause in their own mindset that he's hostile. Let me do whatever I got to do so I can go home tonight.
I was talking to a group one night, and they kept pushing back. They said, well, this happened to my ancestors, and this happened to my ancestors. And I said, you know what? I can't fix what happened to your ancestors. I can't fix it. All I can do is agree with you right now to do different from this day forward in my heart, and hope that you'll do different in your heart from this day forward as well. Right. I can't fix that, but I still believe that the principle and the foundation of equality, while it may not have meant that to them, doggone it, to me, it means equality. Right. All men and women are created equal. Mm-hmm. That we should be treated as such. That justice should be blind. Lady Justice is blind. There's no reason for our prisons to be overflowing with people of color and the way they are. It is our responsibility to live up to that establishment of equality that was spoke about in the Declaration.
Well, you know, my brother, I wish more people were like you, like her father, and like this gentleman right here and others I know, because the world would be better. We would have that oasis. But like I said earlier, you have folks that I ran into that say, hey, I want you in my neighborhood. You may only have a third of those type of people in the world, but they're the ones that are in control of the laws, on your police force, in your judicial system, in the Senate. You know, you have these people that are still, and they the ones are controlling the policies. And if we can get more of him, more of you, more of her in those roles, then you can see a real change. Until, like I said, until the generations, you gotta have some generations die off for it to get better. And it's sad to say. By the time him and I get to be about 70, 80 years old, it might be better. You'll see a whole lot better, but it's still gonna need some more change.
See, in my organization, we believe that leadership starts at the grassroots and it comes up. Right. Government doesn't change at the top. Right. It changes when people like us come together, sit down like this, and stop looking at the R and the D and say, we. Right. And work together.
If you guys could wave a magic wand and change one thing about society and the criminal justice system, whatever you choose to do, wave your magic wand, change one thing, make the world better, what would it be?
I'll go to what you said earlier about plea bargaining and defense. You know, plea bargaining is in and of itself, as a function, not how it is performed, but as it is today, is a necessary evil. If everyone went to trial on every single case, the backlog in our courts would be, I mean, you wouldn't get a trial for whatever you did or didn't do for a decade, and that's literal. However, right now in Ohio, our public defenders that are employed by the state, public defenders, are overworked and don't have enough relief. Meanwhile, private counsel that are appointed as public defenders, they're capped out anywhere between $700 and $1,000 per case. And so their incentive is still to go to a plea bargain instead of reaching a trial and a just conclusion. So if I could wave a wand, it would be that every person would have the opportunity for trial, truly, in all practicality, have the opportunity for a trial, and would truly know their rights in the process, and that those that plea bargaining is truly in their best interest, that they would have the opportunity for the education to make that decision in full good conscience, and that those who are delivering their Sixth Amendment rights to them in providing that defense, that their incentives would be thoroughly aligned, that their incentive would be to provide the best defense possible, as opposed to keep a judge happy, to keep a docket moving.
My magic wand would be for us to realize that there is more that we agree on than we disagree on. If I were to sit down with you, you say that here you're seen as a uber progressive. We probably don't line up politically in a lot of ways. I'm not far right and I'm not far left. But if you and I were to sit down and have a cup of coffee, I bet that we agree on 90% of the things, yet we let the world divide us on the 10% that we disagree on. And I wish that my magic wand would be that we all would realize that there's more, that we are more alike than we are different.
Yeah, I had to piggyback off what he said. My magic wand would just be that we get rid of both red and white and blue and all that, and just none of that, just humanity. Let's just focus on humanity. Can we focus on that? You're human, you're human, you're human, and you're human, and let's forget about Democrat, Republican, whatever, socialism, capitalism. Let's get rid of all those terminologies and let's just focus on humanity. If we all, I said this one time and they quoted me on this when I said this uptown. I said, we all peel each other's skin back, everybody in here will look red. Let's focus on humanity. That's my magic wand.
That would hurt, by the way.
I know.
So, I mean, if I had a magic wand, it would be, we have it good here in Mansfield to the point where everyone pretty much lives together here in Mansfield. So we don't see the policing of areas differently here in Mansfield because, but when you go to New York City where people self-migrate and they self-isolate, there's one section all Chinese, one section all black, one section all West African, and you really see the way areas of color are policed differently. A lot of people smoke weed on all sides but they police the black area differently, which is where the disparity comes from. So if I had a magic wand, it would be that our police force would police everyone in the same manner. Because like I said, I believe that is where a big part of the fact that the prison population is so color driven,
So my magic wand is something I realize I've been working towards my whole life is I want to wave a wand and I want the OGGs to be in charge. I want the original gangster grannies. I want women of color. I want the old black ladies and the old Native women who I've worked with my whole life, who when they're in charge, we are all taken care of because they are looking at it from the bottom up. They get it. And, I know most people are like, they're still Native people, but there's so much going on now that if we were following that leadership, and again, leadership not in our construct of, the person with the microphone has power, but that idea of grassroots and the idea of all of these things are tied together where you have, natural law, you're thinking about living in the context of the world. You don't build things based on like the attainment of wealth. I know people think that sounds fantastical, but it's not. And lots of societies live that way. And if we put the OGGs in charge, I think we'd be all right.
What's one thing that you guys are going to take away from tonight and think, I'm going to think of things differently, I'm going to do things differently? One thing that you're going to take away from this conversation we've had.
I would say that I could work with a New York progressive. No, and I don't mean that mean. I really don't. But it's just like I've been saying all along, that I would love to sit down and just have coffee with you.
Yeah. No, I'd take you up on that. You know.
I'll even buy.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know what to expect coming in here. I'd seen this series, but I hadn't. I know every topic is different, and I know every room is different, so I didn't, know what to expect coming in. But as all of us have said, these conversations are necessary. These conversations are needed. And I said it earlier, uncomfortability is how you create change. So what I'm going to take away is very similar to what he has spoken about, is the ability to sit down with different-minded people and find common ground. And in this society, it's what has to be done. Like-minded people are not going to be able to push these different-minded people to think one way by all grouping together and ganging up on them. It's going to take all of us coming together and having these conversations. So,
and then ganging up on them. Let's be very clear. Sorry, I didn't mean that.
How about you, Beth? One thing you'll take away.
Each one teach one. It's true. I mean, I say that like, just, all those, it's hard because I always want people in like leadership positions, and I just mean the folks at the end of the day who have too much control economically, because that's the root of the things now is that, it's 1%. The 1% conversation is the biggest one, the 1% that runs everything else. And corporations are stronger than governments. Like these are the frameworks. And the only reason I want to see those folks take more action and take more responsibility or get out of the way and let these kind of conversations happen. And, and that's the game of like waiting for that to happen versus making it happen. And there needs to be more places where, it isn't a constructed conversation, right? I mean, it's good, but, that's, because even in our, I don't know where we all land necessarily, but it's just even hard to kind of figure out a thread for all of us to connect to, even when we are fighting for something similar. And that's always the challenge. So the thing I'll take away is that, the thing I believe when I'm at home, I'm like, I know there's more people in this community who care, who truly care, and don't just, aren't just waiting for something to, everybody feels voiceless or helpless or whatever. There's more people who care. And, how can we meet on the, at the park at 9 o'clock? Like, how can we get together more easily and more accessibly? And it doesn't always have to be about the leveraging of politics, like this task force idea. I want people to support it. It's simple, now we make it what it is, but it is, something that the element of finding something that we can all at least unify around so that we know who needs to be pressured, because some people do need to be pressured into doing the right thing. And, while the rest of us, make the world better and let them follow instead of us wait around for that lack of inaction. So
I have to say what she said. It's the 1%. It's the people that, control the movement of everything. And so what I would like to see, not necessarily take, because these brothers right here, they remind me of guys that I know, that I hang out with, other preachers, maybe they be future preachers later on, I don't know. But I have a lot of brothers like these two, and sisters that I think like that. But it's always the common folks that think like this. It's never the big pocket people. And if they are thinking like this, they have another agenda. Because the word of God tells me that the God of this world rules this world, and he the one that manipulates the 1% to do his bidding. So that's why we see chaotic things. And because I'm going to the spiritual side now, because the Bible tells us the God of this world, which is Satan, Lucifer, he the one dictates the chaos, dictates the racism, keeps us divided, so we destroy the world. And so we all, whether you have a little faith or believe in some God, we all need to pray. So, I mean, I believe in Jesus Christ, but I don't care what God you believe in. You need to believe in some God and pray to him that he will resolve the issues in our society, because it's not just here in America, it's abroad. Racism is everywhere. It's a global pandemic.
One thing I want to do differently is like you, I didn't know what to expect coming in tonight for this conversation, and Ray knows a little bit because I was kind of peppering him with text messages, because I don't like going in somewhere unprepared, and unprepared doesn't necessarily even mean I've been working with criminal justice for years now. Before that, it was government transparency, and before that, it was health and human services. I mean, shoot, I was my entire career in the public space, I've been getting ready for this. But there was I allowed fear to creep up on me before coming in here tonight, even because I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know, and I think that as I'm sitting here and I'm hearing each of you talk here as we go around for this final question, realizing that I think that I've allowed some conversations to not even happen because I didn't feel prepared to have it in the first place, because I didn't already have all the answers. So one thing I want to do different is I want to stop letting fear get in the way of me having conversations when I don't already know all the answers about where other people are.